Welcome to Off the Page, the show where we talk with Colorado authors to get the story behind the story. I'm Stacy McKenzie, a librarian here at Mamie Dowd Eisenhower Public Library in Broomfield. Later in the show, we'll be talking with Grady Birdsong, author of A Fortunate Passage. But first, I'm happy to have author Benson Parker. Hello, Benson. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for bringing yourself and your book, Western Progeny, with you.
Thank you for having me.
Benson, before we get to talking about the book, I'd like to hear a little bit more about you. Have you always been an author?
No, I didn't start writing until I retired when I was 60. Before that, I'd read a lot of Western history. Before that, I didn't have a real career. I had between 50 and 100 different jobs.
Wow.
Construction, truck driver, heavy equipment operator, landscaping. The last 10 years I was in hotel maintenance, so I had a lot of experiences to draw on.
With all of the career experiences that you've had, has that lent itself to you writing the short story genre?
It may have. I stuck with short stories because I don't have a long enough attention span to write a novel. So,
So that's a good thing.
yeah.
Yeah, stick with what you know, right?
Right.
With so many topics covered in your short stories, if someone asked you, hey, what's your book about? How would you describe it?
It's a collection of short stories all set in the Southwest, but more in the 20th century than the 19th century.
Okay. So a modern take on the West.
Right.
But you've got everything from animals and time travel. How did you come up with all these different topics? Do they just come to you?
Some of them just came to me, I guess, like I said, from reading all that Western history. I had a lot of, ideas in the back of my mind.
So that's what you like to read, is Western history?
Yeah.
And that gave you, but the history is real life, and these are fiction.
Right. Maybe faction.
Faction. Ooh, that's a great word. Explain that one to me.
Fiction, but with a lot of facts in it.
Oh, okay. Okay, let's talk about the book. Tell me about one of the stories in your book.
The first story in the book is called Wardell, and it's about a guy named Wardell who works on a ranch in a couple of 100 miles south of Gallup, New Mexico. And he has an adventure with his friend where his friend goes to Hollywood and becomes a B-Western stuntman. And Wardell has a confrontation where he accidentally kills a guy, goes to the ranch and hides out. And because it's the 1950s and the ranch is so big, nobody ever comes to look for him, and he spends the rest of his life out there riding the line and having adventures, and then you'd have to buy the book to get the rest of the story.
Ah, it's a teaser. Benson, as you're writing your short stories, have you ever found that one of them lends itself to writing maybe an expanded novel?
Not really. I did write a screenplay for one of the stories.
Okay.
But when I looked into what it's like to promote a screenplay, I found that you have to move to Hollywood and sell your soul to the devil. So I haven't gone any further with the screenplay.
I've heard the same thing. I'm glad you're still here and not out there doing that. Now, on your website, you mention that this information may have come to you in a very unique way. Explain that to me.
Could I explain it by reading a little paragraph from
Sure.
one of my blog entries at westernprogeny.com?
Would love to hear it.
The desert drew me in with a dreamy, seductive unfolding. After hiking all day, I sat in a desert garden at twilight when tan and gray mountains turned pink. It was the night they invented Desert Rapture, and I threw a handful of precious stones into the midnight sky and watched as they turned to comets and etched fiery trails across the starry void. The millennial night was filled with blissful, revealing panoramas, and at dawn I woke in a snuggery, feeling a balming, opulent effect and the wonderment of it all, the desert. So maybe during those blissful, revealing panoramas, camping out in the Sonoran Desert, things came to me sometimes.
That sounds marvelous.
Thank you.
Now, you aren't from Colorado originally,
Florida.
Florida. Where are these books based out of the West? Is it Florida that you got inspiration for these? Or you said Sonoma Desert?
I've lived out in the West. I lived in Tucson 5 years, lived in Kingman, lived in Taos.
And they have a very kind of New Mexico Western feel. Since you've been in Colorado, have you gotten a new perspective, maybe another book of short stories for the Colorado sort?
No, not really.
Not yet?
Sorry, but no.
Do you have another idea about a book that you're going to write in the same vein, or you got it all out in this one?
No, I thought of a really good idea for a nonfiction book.
Okay.
And started collecting information about it. No one's ever written a book about this subject, so that may develop into something as time goes by.
We'll watch your website maybe for that and see if we can find that one out. When people have talked about you and your book's reviews have said it has a true cowboy spirit. What does a true cowboy spirit mean to you?
I think maybe they were referring to the fact that all the stories set in the Southwest have a reverence for the land, and they're wholesome, clean. Children could read them. Maybe that's what they were thinking of.
Okay, I like that. That's a good way to promote that. What group would you describe as the ideal reader for your book?
Probably men over 50.
Okay.
A lot of the references, younger people wouldn't know what I'm talking about when I talk about a border radio, singing cowboy on border radio, or uranium prospectors in the 1950s, or Harvey girls. Or a lot of people couldn't relate to that unless they'd, been around.
That sounds wonderful. I like that it has a specific audience. Everybody can enjoy it, but this is really the ideal audience for them. Now let's talk about how the book came to be. You self-published the book, correct?
I did. I thought when I first started writing stories, in my naivety, that I would get a literary agent. And, well, when I started looking into it, I found that online that about half the literary agents out there have gone out of business in the past few years. And I started looking at publishers and literary agents, and they're very upfront on their websites about what they want and don't want. They want people with name recognition, politicians, celebrities, actors, sports figures, people like that. They don't want first-time authors, westerns, or collections of short stories, and they'll tell you that on their website. We don't want that. So I started leaning towards self-publishing. And then when I was doing that, I came across this website called literaryrejections.com, and there they list hundreds of authors and books that were rejected hundreds of times, some that went on to sell millions of copies, some that won Pulitzer Prizes, some that were made into movies and television series and things like that. So after a while I started wondering, do I really want to submit my manuscript to people like this who turned down, for example, J.K. Rowling 17 times, or Hemingway, or Faulkner, or Agatha Christie, or all these other people that have been turned down. Agatha Christie finally self-published and went on to sell millions of books. So that pushed me even more towards self-publishing.
Do you feel like the reputation of a self-published book has changed in the past several years?
Yes, I do. It's just read the other day that a quarter of the books, bestsellers on Amazon, are self-published, and that half of all the books being published are self-published. Famous authors are now realizing they can cut out the middleman and self-publish it themselves. It's easier for them because they've got the name and everything.
Yes, I would definitely agree. What challenges did you come across when you decided to self-publish?
The self-publishing process itself was pretty hard for me because it's all done online, and I can barely get online. Fortunately, my wife's a genius, which just means I haven't been right about anything in 20 years, but she took care of all that part of it and made that part easier.
And tell me about your wife. What's her name?
Michelle.
Hess. Everybody needs a genius wife, right?
Really.
That sounds about right. How did she help you with the process?
She did the proofreading and the editing and did the submitting to Create Space, the company I went with. which was really great. Ended up costing about $300. Now it's even cheaper than that. They got it listed at Amazon. I thought, oh, listed at Amazon. My problems are over. Yeah, there's about 1 million books listed at Amazon, so that didn't really help. But
Do you feel like now that you know that have done the process once and that you know that your genius wife is going to help you, that it's inspiring you to write more as opposed to maybe saying, no, it was too big a hassle?
maybe.
Maybe. Does it depend on your idea for the book or how it's coming together?
Now when I have an urge to write something, I enter it as a blog entry at the book website.
Uh-huh.
And I looked at other authors' book websites when we were setting up this one, and saw that they all the same in a way. They've all got a picture of the author, and every entry at the book website is about the book. I don't have a picture of me on there, and none of the few entries I've made have anything to do with the book. They're just things I wanted to put down someplace.
So you kind of feel out your ideas on your website blog?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. Did you have a blog before? Did Michelle help you out with the blog?
No, I mean.
Okay, we've learned one thing we all need when we're going to publish books. We need a genius wife.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Well, Benson, do you have any sort of timeline for us to think about when you might be putting out your next nonfiction book?
Not really.
You're good. You're just going to take your time, and when it's finished, it's finished.
All right.
How long did it take you to write this one?
When did it take me to write this one? I don't know, maybe a couple of years.
Okay. That's not too bad.
And anyone who ever thinks about writing should, in my opinion. It's good for you, it's therapeutic, it's creative, it's inexpensive, as I just said. Promoting the book's another story. I have a friend who studied his family genealogy for years and then wrote a book about it and had 50 copies self-published, and he gives those to his relatives. And was that another example of that?
And so that is sort of what it's about. We have to realize we're not going to make $1 million from our publishing, but it's really about the process, is what you're saying.
I just read someplace the other day that the average many self-published books end up selling about 50 copies, most of those bought by the author, who gives them to friends and relatives as gifts, and that's great. That's a much more personal gift than buying something at the mall or ordering something online.
Very much more personal and wonderful.
Yeah.
Benson, thank you so much for coming and sharing your book with us. We want you to hurry up and do the next one. Anybody who can write eloquent, lovely fiction like you do, I'm excited about a nonfiction book by someone who can write like that. So thank you very much. Tell your lovely genius wife, Michelle, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And again, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Join us after the break when we'll talk with Grady Birdsong, author of Fortunate Passage. Where are you?
I'm just a few minutes away.
What medications do you take?
I can help you if I have the information.
Seconds count.
What if you could provide us with life-saving information before an emergency?
Now you can.
It's free, private, and secure.
Visit smart911.com to create your safety profile.
Help us help you.
Welcome back to Off the Page. I'm so happy to be talking with Grady Birdsong. Grady, how are you today?
I'm fine.
It's been great talking to you about the book. Before we jump into that, I love to hear about what my authors did before they were published authors.
Thank you very much for having me today. I appreciate it very much.
Sure.
When I got back from Vietnam, I was in the Marine Corps. I'd served 2 tours over there, and I started working for Mountain Bell. And I segued into going back to school and became a systems engineer and a product manager, got into marketing, worked for Storage Technology Corporation, segued on into other things, worked for an Israeli company, Electronics Corporation of Israel, traveled all over the world for them, finally led a team of engineers and marketing people to do a transfer of technology in China. That was pretty exciting. I've been in telecommunications, data, fiber optics until I retired a few years ago.
Wow. So you've been all over the world and had all these exciting jobs and maybe some adventures along the way. And when you decide to write a book, you kind of looked internally, right?
That's right. That's right. What best to write about is something that you know about.
That's right. Or
Very
something you
intimately.
really wanted to know about.
Right.
Well, let's talk about the book now, A Fortunate Passage. What's it about?
The book is about my family. Have you ever wanted to know where your family came from, how they got to America? I decided to trace my family all the way back to as far as I could find them. They literally came from opposite ends of the globe. My grandfather, we traced the birdsong name back to Jamestown area, as I told you earlier. And he migrated, the family migrated into the Georgia area. My great-grandfather, I found out, was a country doctor in the Talbotton, Georgia area, which is close to Fort Benning, Georgia. My grandmother came from Russia, that's how they pronounced it in German.
Yeah.
She was a German, a Volga German, and our family came to America and settled in Kansas in sod homes and became wheat farmers out there. And so I've tried to tell this story about how they came to America, but I also tried to tell the story of inserting history into it.
Yes.
Local history, national history. For example, in Georgia, the end of the Civil War, my great-great-great-grandfather was a veterinarian for the Confederate Army. He got captured, sent to a horse farm to take care of the Union soldier horses. And towards the end of the war, I wrote about how General James Wilson, one of Grant's favorite generals, had the last battle of the Civil War in Columbus, Georgia, which is Fort Benning, Georgia now, and how they came through the area where my family lived, and I tried to tell about how they might have felt emotionally. So I tried to insert all these little things into the book, even though it is a kind of a history of our family.
Right.
So it was a lot of fun. The research part was the great part.
And how did you do that research?
Okay, there are a
Buckle in, right?
there's a multitude of resources. There is no one piece of it, any place. You have to piece it together. Like Benson earlier in the interview pieced his stories together into one book. The Jefferson County Public Library, and I'm sure a lot of the libraries have Heritage Quest online.
Yes.
And you can do that from home. And I'm fairly literate on the computer, so I got a lot of information from there. I was able to get into the archives in Georgia. I got a lot of the marriage licenses, a lot of the death certificates, stuff like that. You can get the census on there. The other place that I went is the National Archives, which is here at the Federal Center down in Denver. My neighbor happens to be a volunteer down there, and he showed me the ropes, and they have all kinds of information on microfilm. And if they don't have it down there, they can order it in. It's pretty tedious to go through all of that. I did a lot of interviewing with my family, with my father, with my mother, cousins, aunts and uncles. And one of the ladies out in central Kansas where my grandparents had homesteaded has Judith Reynolds with the Rush County Historical Society invited me out, and I went out and talked about the book. Prior to that, she had all kinds of information for you. They have the National Barbed Wire Museum out there.
Wow.
La Crosse, Kansas, right south of Hayes, Fort Hays State College. And she was a wealth of information on the Volga Germans homesteading in central Kansas. So the research part of it was the fun part.
Was there anything sort of elusive to you, or did you really want to find an answer that you didn't quite find?
Yes. One of the things that I did, the family was always wanting to know why my grandfather, who was a railroad engineer, was not drafted into World War I. And I pretty much stumbled across that from research. By deduction, I didn't find out the specific answer, but by deduction, I found in the archives the Selective Service Draft Board classifications. I did a whole bunch of research on that, and he was classified. I found his draft card when he first signed it, his signature. When he was classified as a Class 2. There were 5 classifications. He was classified as a number 2, which means that he would go second. The classification 1, they went immediately into the draft. Classification 2, they were held back for vocational reasons, which he was a railroad. He was on the railroad. If you'll remember, in World War I, the railroads were having a hard time, so Hoover nationalized the railroad because they needed to move men and materials to France in World War I in 1917, 1918. And then the draft was did away with in 1920, or the National Railway Administration Act was done away with in 1920. So I found out a lot more than I had ever bargained for, but I didn't find the actual answer.
Yeah, that one elusive answer. Did you have any wow moments while researching the book?
Well, I didn't write about it in the book, but my dad was sitting around talking one day, and he said, "You know, Uncle Sam," that was my great uncle who was in World War I, who I researched, and he says, "Old Blackjack used to call him," and of course he was talking about Blackjack Pershing. And I said, "You said what, Dad?" And he said, "Blackjack Pershing used to call Uncle Sam," and evidently my Uncle Sam, my great Uncle Sam, was Blackjack Pershing's German interpreter in World War. I have never been able to find it in the research, so I didn't write about it in the book. But it's a family story. It's hearsay, so I didn't put it in the book. But it was kind of interesting that he said that, yeah, Blackjack could call him on the phone and say, "Sam, can you still get in your uniform? And I want you to come be with me when I give a speech here in Kansas City." Because Blackjack Pershing was from that area. And he was instrumental in doing the World War I memorial there in Kansas City also.
That sounds like a jumping off point for another book. Grady, do you have another book that you're working on?
I'm in the process of writing a book about my experience in Vietnam in Tet of '68, my unit. It's a photographic, descriptive history of us, 1st Battalion, 27th Marines, and I'm about 60% complete. The reason I say photographic is I'm on the reunion committee for the battalion. I get a lot of pictures from all of the guys, so I've taken these pictures and I'm going to compile them into this historical book. If nothing else, it's going to go in the archives for the Marine Corps, and it tells all about us when we went there in 1968, the Tet of 1968.
Sounds like a wonderful first-hand account with all the images and everything. That's really exciting for that. Now, Grady, this book is self-published. Tell me about your self-publishing process.
I got into self-publishing. I wanted to write this book, A Fortunate Passage, and I didn't know where to start. I didn't know where to begin. And a young lady, I go to a monthly luncheon. It's a Marine Corps luncheon. We have about 140 members, and 50, 60 of us show up every month at the Arvada American Legion. And we have some women Marines in there, and this one young lady, Karen Barella, who works for the Colorado District Attorney's Council. She had written a book about 3 of our guys who were on Iwo Jima. They come to the meetings every month, and so she wrote about them more than 36 days. This is a wonderful book. And the reason for more than 36 days is they told all the Marines going over there before they assaulted Iwo Jima that it would only take 36 days. Well, that wasn't the story.
Let me guess,
So
it
it took a
more.
lot longer,
Yeah,
and it was one of the more horrific battles. But these three gentlemen that she writes about tell some harrowing tales and some very good tales about their experience on Iwo Jima. I said, "How did you write this?" She self-published it. She says, "Well, I belong to the Colorado Independent Publishers Association." And I says, "Can I go?
Yeah.
I want to find out more about this." She took me, and lo and behold, there is a wealth of information. There are all kinds of people in this organization. We have 140 members plus. I'm on the board of directors now. And my mission is to find more members. We're looking for authors. We're looking for authors that want to be authors. We're looking for service providers. We have a multitude of experience in this organization. We have editors. We have coaches. We have publishers. We have graphical artists. For example, the book crafters people. Jan and Joe McDaniel. They have a little book. This is a good little outline of what you got to think about when you publish a book. It's self-publish your handbook, your book handbook. It's all about what you need to know. I'm really excited about this organization. Dr. Patricia Ross, Hugo Publishers, www.hugopublishing.com. She's our president. She is a vibrant person. She is a great team leader. She's got us all focused. We have a guest speaker every month. We have seminars. We have panels after the guest speakers speak. It's a fun organization if you want to write a book, if you want to self-publish. Self-publishing is come a long way, and as Benson indicated earlier, it's really picking up, self-publishing.
Grady, thank you so much. So much information, a great book, a great organization, and thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank the authors that I had on today's show, Benson Parker and Grady Birdsong. And check your local library for the books that we've talked about on today's show. And join us for more next time on Off the Page.